Is it possible to generate market-beating long-term returns in the stock market simply by copying the moves of the best investors in the world, by buying the stocks that they are buying and selling the stocks that they are selling? Well, a paper out of the University of Nevada called "Imitation is the Sincerest Form of Flattery" suggested that yes, that is in fact possible. If you clone the moves of the best investors in the world, you tend to generate very good long-term returns. And I wanted to basically take a group of some of my favorite investors and run an experiment with a hypothetical $100,000 portfolio to see whether generating good returns in the market is actually possible by following that type of strategy. This video is going to be the latest update on that Shameless cloner portfolio that I've now been running since October 2021. I'll share how the portfolio has been performing and what sort of returns we've generated. I'll also share how the portfolio currently looks and the latest moves I've made in terms of buys and sells, given the latest batch of 13F filings and super investor portfolio data that's just recently come out. And a big thank you to ShareSite, which is the tool that I'm using to track this Shameless cloner portfolio. ShareSite is the tool I use personally to track my own portfolio. As you'll see in this video, it gives us a great breakdown of returns in terms of capital gains or losses, currency fluctuations, and dividend income. It's a tool that's born right here in New Zealand, but is now available in over 60 countries. And I also use it to do all of my tax reporting. It's made tax time super simple. I can generate some basic reports out of ShareSite, send them off to my accountant, and that's kind of tax time done as far as my investments. And it's just been an absolute lifesaver. So there is a free version of ShareSite you can use forever, but if you want to get some more premium features, there will be a link down in the description below, sharesite.com/investingwithtom, which will get you 4 months free off of an annual subscription to ShareSite. Now, firstly, a quick refresher on some of the rules for the Shameless cloner portfolio for anyone that hasn't come across this series before. Now, the stocks that end up in this portfolio are sourced from what I call my Mount Rushmore of super investors. These are some of my personal favorite investors that I follow most closely, and the people on that list are Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Mohnish Pabrai, Guy Spier, Li Lu, and Norbert Lu. So those 6 investors basically are the source of more or less all the investments that end up in this hypothetical portfolio. In previous episodes, as we were going from basically 100% cash as a starting point to getting fully invested where we are now, there weren't enough new investments just from that Mount Rushmore kind of list. So we did take investment ideas from other investors initially, but we're now at the point where we've got a full kind of Mount Rushmore only portfolio of stocks. The long-term goal is to end up with a kind of 10 by 10 portfolio, 10 stocks with about a 10% allocation. As it stands right now, we have a 9-stock portfolio, so 8 of them have a 10% allocation and 1 of them has a 20% allocation. So once we get that 10th stock, one of those positions will be cut in half to get the full 10 by 10 kind of allocation going. And the other rule is that I will only purchase a stock in the portfolio if I can get it at within 30% of the midpoint price in which a super investor bought it. So for example, if a stock sells somewhere between $80 a share and $120 per share in the quarter in which, say, Warren Buffett bought that stock, that would mean the midpoint is 100, and I would purchase it at no higher than 30% above that $100 price, or $130 per share in that example. And this is where the portfolio was at in August 2022 when I last gave an update. And our portfolio consisted of Chevron, a clone of Warren Buffett, Winnebago, a clone of Norbert Lu, Alibaba, a clone of Charlie Munger and also Guy Spier, Berkshire Hathaway, a clone of Warren Buffett's buybacks, as well as Li Lu, and also Guy Spier is a long-term holder of Berkshire, but his specific purchase didn't pass the 30% price test. We have Activision Blizzard, which is a clone of Warren Buffett, Google, a clone of both Guy Spier and Li Lu, Countryside Partnerships, a clone of Norbert Lu, Daily Journal Corporation, a clone of Guy Spier, and finally we had Prosus, a clone of both Guy Spier and Mohnish Pabrai. So let's jump over to ShareSite here and have a look at how the portfolio has been performing so far. Now, I'm currently looking just at the calendar year, and this is kind of how things have stacked up. So for most of 2022, the Shameless Cloner portfolio has been tracking pretty well relative to the S&P 500, which is our benchmark here. Of course, stocks have been down a fair bit in 2022, and the Shameless Cloner portfolio is down as well, but we're down less than the S&P 500. So we've had about minus 7% in capital gain, a little bit of income from dividends, and the currency has moved against us a little bit because we do have a couple of international stocks with process and countryside partnerships. And overall, as of recording the video, we're down about 7.7% versus down about 16% for the S&P 500. So that's kind of where we're at in 2022. Since inception, the picture isn't quite as good in terms of performance relative to the S&P 500. We did have a really rough start with the Shameless Cloner portfolio, mostly due to having a big 20% allocation to Alibaba, which is down something like 50% in the portfolio. So as you'll see, we really diverged from the S&P 500 kind of right out of the gate. But there have been points in time where the Shameless Cloner portfolio has pulled ahead. You'll see back here in kind of May, June, July, we were tracking ahead of the S&P. We've fallen back a little bit and seem to be kind of closing the gap again now. And overall, the performance is a little bit behind the S&P 500. So our total return is about negative 10.9% versus negative 9.4% in the S&P. So I really want to run this kind of experimental portfolio for quite a long period of time. So I'm not too interested in, just a single year performance or anything like that. I do want to genuinely run this for several years and kind of see how it plays out, but that's where the returns in the portfolio currently sit. Okay, so let's now look at what the current portfolio holdings are, because there have been a couple of changes since the last quarterly update. And apologies if you hear any background noise, it's currently raining very heavily outside. But in terms of the current portfolio, looking from kind of largest to smallest here, this is where we currently sit, and you may notice a couple of changes if you've been following along with the series. So our largest position currently is Chevron, followed by Berkshire, Alibaba, Taiwan Semiconductor, which is a new one. I'll talk about that in a sec. Activision Blizzard, Brookfield Asset Management, again a new one. Again, I'll talk about that in a sec as well. Daily Journal Corporation, Alphabet, and Prosus. And we have quite a few stocks that have now been completely sold out of that were former holdings in the portfolio. So those include Winnebago, just short-term treasuries, which was kind of a cash alternative we had when we were just starting out with the portfolio. Meta, Hilton Grand Vacations, and Countryside Partnerships. Now, keen viewers will notice that there have been two stocks that have been sold since the last quarterly update. So let's talk through both of those. Now, the first one is Countryside Partnerships. That was a clone of Norbert Liu at Punchcard Capital or Punchcard Management. And that is a pretty straightforward one. Unfortunately, Countryside Partnerships was taken away from us to an extent. That is a UK home builder, which was actually just recently acquired, literally within the last week as of recording this video. So that one we were kind of forced to sell, although we did have technically a bit of an option. Countryside Partnerships was acquired, and Countryside shareholders actually received shares in the acquirer kind of company, which is a UK listed business called Vistry, and they also got some cash, but I've basically just run this in the portfolio as if I got those shares in the acquirer company, sold it immediately, and then for a few days had that cash move into our short-term bond fund until it was reallocated with some new stocks from the latest batch of 13Fs. So this was the performance for Countryside Partnerships. The market was down about 7.2%. Unfortunately, we've had to take about a 22% loss on that holding, but that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled, I guess. And if we go back to the overall portfolio, we do have one other stock that has been completely sold, and that is actually, if I order by value here, that is actually Winnebago. So Winnebago was, again, another clone of Norbert Liu, actually. Norbert Liu has owned Winnebago since early 2019. He added to it in a modest way, I believe, last quarter. If I go and look at some of the purchase history, we should be able to see that. so a couple of quarters ago. So mid-May, that got added to the portfolio when Norbert Lu made a small addition. Norbert Lu has recently trimmed that Winnebago holding, and he trimmed it more than the ad he did. That kind of got it into the portfolio in the first place. So again, unfortunately, I've had to make the decision, as big a fan of the RV industry as I am. If you've watched the channel, you know what I'm talking about there. Unfortunately, we've had to make the decision to cut that one as well. This one worked out a little better than Countryside Partnerships. So over the holding period, the S&P was down about 1%, and Winnebago did pretty nicely. We booked about a 26% gain on that one. And I'll just talk about one other stock quickly in terms of sales, because those are the only two stocks that have been sold, but we do have sort of a third candidate for potentially selling, and that is actually our investment in Alibaba. So Alibaba is down about 47% as of recording this video since we added it to the portfolio, and that's our one remaining 20% at cost position. So if the Countryside Partnership and Winnebago positions weren't kind of sold this quarter, if we needed more capital to add a new stock, it would probably have come from Alibaba, so that may be something that happens in a future quarter. Now, if you want to see a full breakdown of quarterly kind of super investor activity, just go and check out my previous video on the channel. I ran through a lot of 13Fs in that video and covered quite a bit of portfolio activity from some of the super investors that drive this Shameless Cloners portfolio. But basically out of that, there were kind of four stocks that were potential candidates to be added to the portfolio. There was Occidental Petroleum from Warren Buffett. He's been kind of buying that all year. Taiwan Semiconductor from Warren Buffett. Thirdly, Brookfield Asset Management from Monish Pabrai. He added that to the portfolio this quarter. And fourth and final is Smith & Wesson from Norbert Lu. That was a big add that he made in the latest quarter. I've kind of immediately culled out two of those four stocks. So Occidental, I've chosen not to add because we already had a big Chevron position from Berkshire. So we've already got another big oil company, which is a clone of Buffett, in the portfolio. So didn't really want to double up on that one. And I've also chosen not to add Smith & Wesson. So although Norbert Lu added something like 60% to his holding in that business in the last quarter, it's still only about 2% of the US portfolio. So in the grand scheme, a very small holding, really. But that does leave two new positions that were added, and that is, of course, Taiwan Semiconductor and also Brookfield Asset Management. So Taiwan Semiconductor, a clone of Warren Buffett, that's now a top 10 holding straight out of the gate for Berkshire. And secondly, Brookfield Asset Management is a new holding for Monish Pabrai. So if we kind of scroll up here, I'll go to one of the reports and have a look at the current portfolio allocations. If I go to diversity, we should be able to see that and give you a good overview of what the portfolio kind of currently looks like. So this is our current Shameless Cloner portfolio as it stands right now. I'm recording on the 18th of November. I'm reporting here for the 17th, but that will be near enough for this exercise. And we're getting pretty close to our 10 by 10 portfolio. We've got 9 stocks in there, like I say, still got a 20% cost basis on Alibaba, but I'm pretty pleased with kind of how the portfolio is starting to stack up. And although we're still lagging the S&P 500 since inception, we're making pretty good progress and having a decent year, all things considered, so far in 2022. So that is the latest quarterly update here on the channel for the Shameless Cloner portfolio. If you enjoy these quarterly updates, I really want to keep this series going, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so that you can catch future Shameless Cloner quarterly portfolio updates, and let me know down in the comment section below how you think the portfolio is stacking up so far, and what do you think maybe the prospects are like for the portfolio moving forward, and let me know some of your thoughts on the moves that I made in this quarter as well. I've really tried to stick to the rules as rationally and as strictly as I kind of can, and I think a couple of the things that have come up this quarter have been really interesting examples of how shameless cloning can be kind of great in theory, but it can be sometimes challenging to implement in practice. You know, we had Countryside Partnerships, for example, cloned, and then it was taken away from us. And we had Winnebago that was added to in a small way last quarter, but it was trimmed in a small way, this quarter, and Norbert Lu still owns Winnebago, but we have to make a decision about what happens in the portfolio with that stock. So any thoughts you want to share on the portfolio and on the series so far, definitely let me know down in the comment section below. But that's it from me for this one, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.